Now, there are many disagreements in our field, which is fine, That's characteristic of social science in general. But there are some agreements, and indeed, I must agree with Dr. Johnson, there are different types of violence. And if we're looking specifically at violence against women, and we look around the world, the rates are alarmingly high. I won't go into all the statistics, but we can look at different types, such as wife beating, sexual assault in a variety of relationships, dowry deaths, acid burnings, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you're quite familiar with these things. And the rates are, again, alarmingly high. And with rates so high, if we're talking about, say, in North America, examining a range of studies, we see that at least 11% of women in marital and cohabiting relationships are physically assaulted at least once each year. If we look at university and college students, and they're at very high risk of experiencing sexual assault in dating relationships, and if we have a broad definition of sexual assault that moves beyond strictly forced penetration, and we look at other forms of coercion and so on, we see that at least 1 out of every 4 North American female college and university students experiences some type of sexual assault in the past year. Now, I can give you other figures from the International Violence Against Women Survey. I can give you figures from the World Health Organization. Now, this tells us something about the nature of our society and how the nature of our society shapes one of the world's most compelling social problems. Now, at first glance, for many people, they might think of violence against women as an individual act, as an isolated act. But with figures that are so high, they tell us much about the structure of our society. Now consider, just before I get into violence against women, let's look at Canada and the United States. And in Canada, because we're sleeping next to this giant elephant, we have this tendency to constantly compare ourselves with our neighbors south of the border. And if we look at homicide rates, our homicide rates in general in Canada are 3 to 4 times lower than those of the United States. If we look at predatory street crime, these are crimes that occur in the streets like muggings and stabbings and so on, our rates are markedly lower. Now, I know Canadians have pretty good reputations as peacemakers and so on, but Canadians are not naturally nicer than our neighbors south of the border. And 90% of Canadians and Americans live within 200 miles of each other's border. We listen to the same music, we watch the same television, we dress the same way, and so on and so forth. So why are we less violent in general? There's no gene in Canadians that precludes us from being violent. Well, let's look at this for a minute. Why? It's not population size. If it was population size, if population size was the key source of any type of violence, then perhaps Tokyo, Beijing would have, among the highest rates. Well, Canada has universal health care. We don't have private universities. We have a much better social safety net than the United States. And these are factors that kind of buffer us from engaging in serious types of violence. But let's return now to violence against women. And I want to read a quote from 2 colleagues of mine in Canada. They have a new book out titled Violence in Canada, and it's Holly Johnson, who was one of the principal investigators with the International Violence Against Women Survey, and Myrna Dawson, who's world-renowned for her work on intimate femicide, that is, the killing of women. So let me read this for a minute. How and why violence is understood to occur underpins the directions taken by policymakers, service providers, and community activists to intervene and prevent male violence against women. Theories also play a critical role for suggesting new directions for research. So in order to, and you know this, in order to effectively solve a problem, we need to know what some of the key sources are. So one of the key objectives of my presentation today is to urge us to look up there, to think sociologically, to take a critical examination of the world around us. And if we do open up our eyes and start examining what we may take for granted on a daily basis, we may help develop a richer understanding of a problem and may come up with more effective ways of solving the problem. And I want to focus on some things that are very troubling to me in particular. Now, pornography. We live in what my colleague Robert Jensen refers to as a post-Playboy world. Pornography is a $97 billion industry. The pornography, and that's annually, the pornography industry makes more profit than Microsoft, Netflix, Yahoo, and other major high-tech companies combined. Now, pornography is so easily accessible online. Many people do consume it on a daily basis. There are alarming statistics that I could present to you. But we're not just talking about sexual intercourse and behaviors that many people would consider normal. If you do a rich content analysis of the pornography, you will see it is increasingly racist, violent, and the women that you are seeing gagging and gasping for breath in these images, they are actually gagging and gasping for breath. And if you know anything about the pornography industry, you know that pornography is produced primarily for men and is consumed primarily for men. Now, it's all around us. It's mainstreamed, it's consumed so far and wide. I want to give you an interesting story, though, how people take it for granted and don't necessarily equate its association with contributing to violence against women. Now, I go to hotels, like a lot of my colleagues here, on a regular basis, and especially in North America, the hotels like to brag that they're smoke-free, like the Marriott hotel chain. We're very proud to announce that we offer you a smoke-free hotel. So I go into the hotel room, I turn on the television. It's one of the first things many people do. And you see a list of channels and selections, and then eventually it gets to the adult films. And there's a special message there that the title of the film will not be on your hotel bill. So, and then if you look at some of the titles of these films or videos, and forgive me for my vulgarity, but Racks and Blacks and Spanish Fly and things like this, horrible stereotypes of not only women but of men. And you start thinking, okay, so what I always do, these are my personal politics. I walk downstairs and I go to the desk and I say, may I please speak to the manager? And the attendant at the desk is wondering what's going on. Is there a problem, sir? I said, well, yeah, there is. Why don't you offer me a gender harassment-free hotel? What are you talking about, sir? I said, well, you have all these pornography films here, and they're offensive, and they're violent. And I said, it makes me very uncomfortable to sleep in a room knowing that somebody's watching this stuff in the room next to me. And then it gets reduced to, well, sir, you don't have to watch it. Well, that's not the issue. The issue is that many people are watching it. And what scares me, and there's research coming out of Canada in particular, that the people who are consuming the porn at the highest rates are those who are 13 to 17 years old. And you know if you have children, they're constantly on the computer all the time. I'll give you a funny example. I mean, they can't even talk to each other face to face. My daughter invites her friends for a visit in my house, and they go upstairs. So I decide, okay, I'm going to go say hello. I'll be polite. I open the room, and what do I see? They're on their Palm Pilots, their desks, their laptops are open, and whatever. I said, good God. You people came to hang out with each other, but all they're doing is on their laptops or Blackberries. So these 13 to 17-year-old boys, their first exposure to sex is pornography. And the pornography is very racist and violent, as I've mentioned to you. And these are some of the lessons that our media are teaching people. Now, you don't have to go very far. You can look at billboards, especially in the United States. You can walk into corner stores. It's all around you. This is a sociological phenomenon that is contributing to the degradation and oppression of women. Now, if you look at societies that have lower rates of sexual violence, pornography isn't as prevalent. It's available online, But if you go to Sweden, and this is a terrible thing, Swedes get very upset because much of the porn illustrates Swedish women. And the so-called Swedish porn primarily comes from Germany. But you go into Swedish stores, you're not going to see all these magazines there. And Swedes, are very open about their sexuality. So that's another example of something out there that's widespread that contributes to a significant problem in our society. Employment. Now, if I look at North America, and if I look at Canada, the so-called birthplace of North American socialism, in Canada, for every dollar a man makes, a woman makes 72 cents. What does that tell us about how we value women in our country? Our Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, supposed to be a leader of our country, one of the first things he did when he got elected was eliminate the word equality from Status of Women Canada's list of goals. This is a major federal office. Our Prime Minister also slashed total funding to the National Association of Women in Law. This is another sociological phenomenon, and it tells us about how our country thinks about women's issues and rights. It's okay not to support research and programs on violence against women. It's a powerful statement. It's a reflection of how a governing body thinks about gender relations. What about marital rape? Many people in the United States and Canada are very pleased to announce that it's been criminalized. Oh, has it? Well, if you look, there are some exemptions in the United States for people who rape women. Now, in Canada, in 1983, we moved from the legislation rape to sexual assault to broaden the definition of sexual assault. And at first glance, when you put on your glasses and go through this big criminal code and says you can't ask about a woman's prior history, you read the fine print and you see, but the judge can allow it under certain conditions. Very rarely do judges not allow it for fear of having appeals. So this is another macro level or broader social force that we need to think about. So there are all kinds, I could go on and on and on about the ways in which a society is structured, and hence it doesn't surprise me that if I look at Canada, the United States, the UK, Australia, have very, very high rates of violence against women compared to other countries. Now, if we look at Sweden, Sweden's a country that has the most women in political power, and some of the other Scandinavian countries. It's very interesting. It tells us about how we view women, how we treat women, how we respect women. Okay, what is to be done? This is the question. I know you're fundamentally concerned about that. I have some suggestions. My view is very distinct from several other people, and that's fine, because this session is about controversies. I see violence in intimate relationships being directed primarily at women. I see the primary perpetrators as being men. Now, my argument is if men are the primary perpetrators, it is men's responsibility to take steps to stop violence. And there are many things that can be done individually and collectively at the grassroots level or at the individual level to help end violence against women. You may have heard about what happened on December 6th, 1989. Every year in Canada, many men wear a white ribbon on their shirts or on their jackets. December 6, 1989, Marc Lepin walked into the University of Montreal's School of Engineering with a rifle. And he ordered all the men out of the room, and he systematically opened fire on women and killed 14 and injured several others. He left notes explicitly stating that he hates feminists. He was not allowed entry into the School of Engineering as a student, and he blamed it on feminism. Ever since then, men around the world developed what's called the White Ribbon Campaign and came together and are developing ongoing strategies that they can do on a daily basis to end this violence. What can you do as an individual, as a man, to contribute to ending this? It's not only wearing a white ribbon, It's protesting hotels that show pornography, protesting strip bars and strip clubs, demanding that your politicians develop policies that effectively deal with gender equity, contribute to better women's shelters. When a man is in a public arena or a private arena and is making sexist comments, subtly confront this man and raise questions about it, about his conduct and behavior. Demand that universities and high schools offer quality education about healthy relationships and gender relations. It's interesting, have you noticed in a university, gender seems to be ghettoized in certain departments? Like how often do the engineering departments talk about the importance of gender? They're talked about in social work departments, women's studies departments, psychology departments, sociology departments, but gender influences everything. Put bumper stickers on your car saying, "End violence against women." Dr. Johnson has a Take Back the Night March shirt. He's making a very powerful political statement about the importance of eliminating women's fear of violence. Work together with other men in other communities to develop effective collective policies. Put a bumper sticker on your car, put a sticker on your door, on your office door. Many of us have stickers on our door in the universities which say, "This is a woman abuse-free zone." We talk about nuclear-free zones, we talk about smoking-free zones. Why can't we have a harassment-free zone? Wow, what a radical idea. I can give you a long list of other things that our men are doing individually and collectively to, participate in the struggle to stop one of the world's most compelling social problems. But what worries me, and it worries other people in the field, that violence against women is seen primarily as a woman's issue. It affects us all. As men, we have wives, partners, daughters, sisters, aunts. And when I look at the statistics that are consistently produced, it's no wonder, I am not surprised, that the precautionary steps women take to avoid violence. There's an exercise that many of us have in our classrooms when we're teaching about violence against women. We ask both the men and the women a question. And the question we ask, and it's typically directed to the men first. Men, what precautions do you take to avoid being raped? And then there's dead silence in the room, dead silence. And then one guy will put up his hand. "Oh, avoid going to prison?" Nervous laughter. Then when you ask the women, the exercise could take about an hour. I hold my keys in my hand. I look in the back seat. I call my mother on my way to home. I wear running shoes so in case someone's following me, I can run fast. I do this, I do that, I do this, I do that. Now, I'll be critical of North America. It prides itself on being one of the freest continents in the world. Well, what this tells me is a very powerful social control. What is freedom? How free are women in our society when they have to think and negotiate violence on a daily basis? How many of us as men have to look in the back seat of our car, have to hold our keys, are worried about taking night classes and so on and so forth? These are the realities for women, and this deeply concerns me. How many really bright students are we missing in night classes? How many people are terrified to walk in public arenas because of the pervasive nature of violence against women? And in my presentation so far, I'm almost done. In my presentation so far, I've only focused on violence in intimate relationships. How about when you walk down the street, how often do you see when you walk down the street, a woman's just trying to mind her own business and get on with her life? She's got a job to go to, or she has to see her children, and some dingbat pulls up in a car, rolls down the window, and says, "Hey, baby, you want to fuck?" Now, that often happens. There's catcalls, leerings, and so on. And you may say, well, that's just a rude man, a nasty man. But at that time it happens. You don't know whether after that you are going to be attacked. Or if you get a phone call, an obscene phone call, some of us may just say, well, you know, that's just a crazy guy. But at the time the phone call is heard, there is deep-rooted fear. And that phone call is a form of social control. The sexual harassment on the streets, people, it goes on and on and on. So I think we have a lot of work to do. And men, there's a lot that we can do that does not require a lot of money and that can make a significant difference on a daily basis. So I'll end on that note. Thank you.